I wish I knew this sooner, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. For years, nearly 5 seasons in a row, I was the king of growing the most beautiful, lush, deep green tomato bushes you've ever seen. My neighbors would walk by and compliment how healthy they looked. But here's the secret I was hiding. I was barely getting 3 or 4 decent tomatoes per plant. I was failing, and I was failing loudly. I spent hundreds of dollars on premium fertilizers and specialized cages, thinking that if I just gave the plant more of everything, it would give me more in return. I was trapped in what I now call the lush green trap, and if you're seeing big plants with no fruit, you're trapped there too. You see, most of us are taught that a big plant equals a big harvest. We see those massive stalks and giant leaves and think, man, I'm doing a great job. But the reality is that the plant is actually lazy. When we overfeed it with nitrogen-heavy fertilizers and let it grow every single sucker or side shoot it wants, we are telling the plant to focus on its own survival and size rather than its offspring, the fruit. I wasted so much time and energy pruning things that didn't matter and ignoring the things that did. I was literally working against the biology of the Solanum lycopersicum. If you've ever felt that sting of disappointment when you see a flower drop, or when your plant reaches 6 feet tall but has 0 red on it, I want you to know I've been exactly where you are. This is where the Japanese approach differs so drastically from what we are usually told in the West. In Japan, gardening is often treated with the same precision as bonsai. It's not about how much you can add, it's about what you can take away to allow the plant to breathe and focus. Why is everyone losing time? Because we are obsessed with more. More water, more space, more leaves. But more leaves actually create a humid microclimate that invites blight and pests, which then requires more chemicals and more work. It's a vicious cycle of frustration that I lived in for half a decade. I used to spend my Saturday mornings spraying and worrying instead of enjoying. On average, a home gardener loses about 40 to 60% of their potential tomato yield simply because the plant's energy is being leaked through unnecessary stems. Imagine if your bank account had 5 little holes where money was just dripping out every day. That's what's happening to your tomato plant right now. I wish someone had grabbed me by the shoulders back then and said, "Stop trying to grow a forest, start growing a fruit factory." Today, I'm going to show you how to identify those energy leaks and why the traditional way of just letting the plant do its thing is actually the slowest way to get a harvest. We are going to talk about the 3-leaf rule and the sunlight chimney, concepts that sounded crazy to me until I saw the results with my own eyes. If in doubt, don't consume any part of the plant you aren't sure about and check with a reliable local source, especially when dealing with wild varieties. But for our standard garden tomatoes, the path to a 5x yield starts with understanding that your plant is currently wasting its life force. I'm so excited to finally save you the headache I had to endure. We're about to unlock the shortcut I wish I had 10 years ago, and trust me, once you see the difference in your first cluster of fruit, you'll never go back to the bushy method again. This is the moment we stop being leaf farmers and start being tomato masters. I wish I knew this sooner, but maintenance isn't about how much time you spend in the garden. It's about the quality of the minutes you actually put in. For years, I was that person out there every single evening with a hose, soaking everything, thinking I was being a good plant parent. I was actually drowning my dreams of a 5x yield. The Japanese secret to maintenance is called the minimalist watch, and it's the shortcut I wish I had discovered before I lost dozens of plants to blight and root rot. Once you set up the structure we talked about, keeping it running is actually easier than the old, exhausting way. You just need to know exactly where to look. The biggest mistake I made for a decade was watering from the top. I know, it sounds so simple, but I wish someone had told me years ago that wet leaves are basically an open invitation for every fungus in the neighborhood to move in. In the high-yield Japanese method, we treat the base of the Solanum lycopersicum like a sacred zone. This one, change-only watering the soil, and never the foliage saved me more money on organic fungicides than I care to admit. If you want to keep those results exploding, you have to master the finger-deep rule. Don't trust the surface of the soil, it lies to you. Stick your finger 2 inches down. If it's moist, walk away. Overwatering is the fastest way to flush away all the nutrients your tomatoes need to actually taste like tomatoes. Here is your quick-win maintenance routine that will save you hours every week. The morning ritual: always water before 8 a.m. This gives the plant all day to process that moisture. I used to water at night, and it kept the soil cold and soggy, exactly what slows down fruit production. The air chimney check. Every 3 days, look at the bottom 10 to 12 inches of your plant. If any new leaves have sprouted there, pinch them off immediately. We want a clear chimney for air to flow through. This prevents 90% of common tomato diseases. The sugar boost. Once every 2 weeks, I give my plants a tiny bit of organic molasses mixed in water. It feeds the soil microbes, not just the plant. I wish I knew this shortcut sooner, because it makes the fruit noticeably sweeter within just a few days. I used to think that more is better, but the Japanese way taught me that precise is better. I spent years fighting yellowing leaves, thinking it was a nutrient deficiency when it was actually just poor air circulation. By keeping that bottom chimney clear, I stopped the splash-back effect where soil-borne pathogens jump onto the leaves during rain. This is a game changer because it keeps the plant's immune system focused on making fruit, not fighting off infections. On average, this maintenance style takes me about 10 minutes a week per plant, whereas I used to spend hours fussing and worrying. If in doubt, don't consume and check with a reliable local source, but generally, a healthy tomato plant should have dark, vibrant green leaves at the top and a clean, woody-looking stem at the bottom. If you see spots, don't panic. Just remove the affected leaf and move on. You're saving yourself so much frustration by not overcomplicating this. I'm so glad I can share this with you now because the maintenance burnout is why most people quit gardening after their second year. They think it's hard work. It's not hard. It's just about knowing which strings to pull. This shortcut I'm giving you right now is what separates the once-a-summer hobbyist from the person who has bowls of fresh tomatoes on their counter every single day from July through October. We are building a system that works for you, so you don't have to work for the system. I wish I had known that the lazy way, the targeted, minimal maintenance way, was actually the high-yield way. It felt like cheating when I first started getting these results, but the numbers don't lie. Your harvest is about to become a consistent, predictable victory instead of a stressful gamble. I wish I knew this sooner, but the day my entire perspective on gardening shifted wasn't in a classroom or from a textbook. It was standing in the rain, looking at a neighbor's backyard that looked nothing like mine. While I had a literal jungle of tangled green vines that produced nothing but frustration, my neighbor, a quiet man who had spent his life perfecting Japanese agricultural techniques, had rows of what looked like tomato trees. They were tall, lean, and dripping with clusters of fruit so heavy they looked like grapes. That was the moment I realized I had been playing the game entirely wrong for years. I asked him, "What's the secret? What fertilizer are you buying?" He just smiled and said, "It's not what I give them, it's what I don't let them take." That conversation was the game changer I wish I'd had a decade earlier. He explained that in the Japanese single stem, or uchisaku, Method, you aren't just growing a plant, you are directing a flow of energy. I had been letting my tomatoes grow 5 or 6 main branches, which meant the plant was trying to pump nutrients through a massive, inefficient highway system. His plants were single-lane superhighways. Every single drop of water and every bit of compost went directly to the fruit. I remember going back to my garden that evening, feeling a mix of regret for all the wasted years and an incredible sense of relief. I finally had the shortcut. The discovery that changed everything for me was the first cluster sacrifice. I wish someone had told me years ago that by pinching off the very first set of flowers that appears on a young tomato plant, you actually trigger a massive root explosion. It sounds counterintuitive. Why would you throw away the first tomatoes? But it's the ultimate payoff. By removing those first few flowers, you tell the Solanum lycopersicum that it's not time to reproduce yet, it's time to get strong. 3 weeks later, the plant doesn't just recover, it doubles in thickness. When the next round of flowers comes, the plant has the plumbing to support 5 times more fruit than it would have otherwise. I tried this on half my plants that year as an experiment, and the difference was staggering. The sacrificed plants ended up producing 15 to 20 pounds of fruit each, while my natural ones struggled to reach 4 pounds before getting diseased. I also learned about the aspirin hack during this discovery phase. My neighbor used a tiny bit of salicylic acid, basically a crushed aspirin, in his watering can once a month. I thought he was joking. But science backs it up. It mimics the plant's natural, systemic acquired resistance. It's like a vaccine for your tomatoes. I wish I knew this shortcut sooner because it virtually eliminated the midsummer wilt that used to kill my spirit every August. This wasn't just gardening anymore. It was like I had been given the cheat codes to a game I'd been losing for a long time. Seeing those first heavy, deep red clusters ripen all at the same time. Not one here and one there, but entire branches turning red at once was the most satisfying moment of my life as a grower. I realized that the struggle I thought was part of gardening was actually just a lack of the right information. If in doubt, don't consume and check with a reliable local source, especially if you see unusual growth or pests you don't recognize. But for the most part, the biology of a tomato is incredibly predictable once you stop fighting it. I'm so excited to save you from the jungle phase I lived in. You don't need a bigger garden, you need a smarter plant. This discovery didn't just give me more food, it gave me my Saturdays back. I stopped being a plant mechanic, constantly trying to fix things, and started being a harvest manager. This is the moment where you stop guessing and start knowing. The relief of walking into your backyard and seeing professional-grade results from a simple, focused technique is something every home gardener deserves to feel. I wasted so much time, but you don't have to. You're getting the shortcut right now that took me a lifetime to find. I wish I knew this sooner, honestly. I look back at the years I spent struggling with my tomato plants, and I feel a mix of frustration and profound relief. Frustration, because I wasted hundreds of dollars on fancy soil amendments and miracle sprays that never quite worked. But mostly relief, because I finally found the shortcut that actually delivers. If I had known this Japanese single-stem technique when I first started, I would have saved myself thousands of hours of unnecessary pruning and worrying about bushy plants that produced nothing but leaves. I spent nearly a decade trying to outsmart nature, when all I really needed to do was follow the simple, elegant logic I've shared with you today. Think about the math for a second, and this is the real economy of it all. On average, a family of 4 spends about $15 to $20 a month on decent, flavorless supermarket tomatoes. That's nearly $240 a year for fruit that tastes like cardboard. With this 5x yield method, just 4 plants in a small backyard can provide enough tomatoes for your family to never buy another one again. We're talking about high-quality, organic, sun-ripened fruit that you simply cannot buy. I wish I knew this sooner because the financial and emotional payoff of being self-sufficient in just this one crop is a total game changer. It changes the way you look at your garden. It stops being a chore and starts being a high-yielding asset. I've made every mistake in the book so you don't have to. I've overwatered, I've underpruned, I've used the wrong cages, and I've watched helplessly as blight destroyed a whole season's work in 48 hours. But that version of my garden is gone. Now, I walk out into my backyard and I see a system that works. I see plants that are healthy, focused, and incredibly productive. I see the results of the air chimney and the single stem superhighway every time I harvest a cluster of tomatoes that looks like it belongs in a magazine. If in doubt, don't consume and check with a reliable local source, but once you see these results for yourself, you'll realize that the secret isn't magic. It's just better biology. This is the shortcut I wish someone had handed to me when I bought my first seed packet. It would have saved me so much heartbreak and so many failed seasons. But today, I'm handing it to you. You are literally years ahead of where I was because you now understand the Japanese secret to tomato energy. You know that it's not about doing more, it's about doing the right things. You're about to skip the struggle phase and go straight to the mastery phase. So, here is my challenge to you. This week, go out to your garden and find just one plant to practice the single stem method on. Pinch off those lower leaves, create that air chimney, and if it's a young plant, make that first cluster sacrifice. Watch what happens over the next 14 to 21 days. You will see a level of growth and stem thickness that will blow your mind. Once you see that one plant thriving, you'll never go back to the old way again. I'm so glad I could share this with you before you spent another season guessing. You now have the secret I demare anospera descober. Now go use it and get that 5x yield you deserve. If this shortcut helped clear up some of your garden confusion, let me know in the comments which part of the "I wish I knew this sooner" story hit home for you. Are you an overwaterer like I was? Or were you trapped in the lush green trap? Let's talk about it below so we can keep finding these shortcuts together. Your garden is about to explode with life, and I can't wait to hear about your first massive harvest. Now, get out there and start growing.